Namaskar, good evening, and welcome to Kaushal Charcha, a week-long webinar series covering important aspects of skilling ecosystem of India, organized by the CII Madhya Pradesh Panel on Skill Development in association with ISEC and NSN. I welcome all the participants and the speakers who have joined with us. Two of our speakers will be taking some time to join. However, we can start the discussion with the panel. Uh, we are celebrating the World Youth Skills Day today, and the World Youth Skills Day celebrates the energy and force of our youth in building this nation. And also, it celebrates the resilience of this nation while navigating through this deadly pandemic. While we are recovering from the horrific effects of the pandemic, we must find out new ways to get ourselves and the economy of our country on track. Technical and vocational education, as we know, is an important part of this recovery engine. So let us take stock of the technical and vocational education system in our country. And we have a distinguished panel of speakers with us. Let me introduce all our distinguished panelists. I'm Shalabh Nepalia. I'll be moderating this session. Let me first introduce Mr. Saurabh Johari, who is a consultant with the Asian Development Bank. I hope Mr. Johari has joined. Uh,
Yes, I'm there.
Good evening, sir. Mr. Saurabh Johari is a consultant with Asian Development Bank, and he possesses a postgraduate degree in public policy from IIM Ahmedabad. Mr. Saurabh Johari has over 20 years of experience in education, skill sector reforms, and public policy domain. He started his career with Azim Premji Foundation and Pratham for large-scale project implementation. Along with this, Mr. Johari has earlier worked for McKinsey and Company and PwC in social sector consulting practice. He has also intermittently worked with Observer Research Foundation and the World Bank to design projects and conduct project evaluations. I welcome you, Mr. Johari, to Kaushal Charcha.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Partha Sarthi Basu with us, who is AGM Human Resources with TAFE Motors and Tractors Limited. He has an experience of over 21 years. Mr. Basu has been championing HR strategy, deployment and business integration, organization structure and workforce planning, talent development, employee engagement, and OD initiatives. Presently, he is heading the HR operations of TAFE Bhopal plant, which manufactures Eicher branded tractors. He has previously worked with diversified business conglomerate RPG Group and IT major NIIT Limited. He is an MBA from FMS Baroda and recipient of University Gold Medal, along with PhD HR in the area of CSR practices of large organizations and its role in employee engagement. He has published a number of research papers in national and international journals in the areas of skill development, employee engagement, and CSR. He is a certified Six Sigma Belt certified assessor in CII HR Excellence Model and has received CII National Six Sigma Award for his work in field of talent retention. I welcome you, Mr. Parthasarthi Basu, to Kaushal Charcha. We have Mr. Praveen Sirohi with us, who is Regional Head West for Telecom Sector Skill Council. He's a mechanical engineering graduate from University of Pune and an MBA from Nirma Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Mr. Praveen has over 25 years of experience and has successfully headed assignments in devices, sales, distribution, operations, product marketing, retail, techno industry, renewable energy, project strategic planning and execution. He has also mentored large teams across the globe to create, execute, and deploy projects, businesses for organizations. Having the exposure of developing new export customers in Asia, Europe, Africa, and USA, Mr. Sirohi is an avid learner and has acquired the flair of learning and deploying unique strategies. I welcome you, Mr. Praveen Sirohi, to Kaushal Charcha.
Thank you, Shalabh, and good evening to all.
Good evening, sir. So we are waiting for the Vice Chancellor of Delhi Skills and Entrepreneurship University, Professor Niharika Vohra, and Mr. Siddharth Chaturvedi, who is Vice President, Executive Vice President of ISECT. However, till the time they join, we'll induct them in due course of time. Let me start the Kaushal Charcha with the panelists who have joined, and let me first go to Mr. Saurabh Johari, who is a consultant at Asian Development Bank. He's been working in development financing, policy reforms, and loan implementation in TVET education. Sir, if you could throw some light on what trends do you perceive to be in focus in the skilling and placement sector post recovery from COVID-2 wave, and probably in coming 1 or 2 years, the skilling ecosystem is going to change, and probably the government sponsored training programs are also going to change. So with your experience, if you could please throw light on these aspects of the ecosystem. Over to you, Mr. Saurabh.
Okay, thank you, Shalabh. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. And first of all, a very, very happy World Youth Skill Day wishes to all of you, all the panelists and all the participants. I see about 400 participants joining this discussion. I would like to also greet panelist Professor Niharika Vohra, who has taught me at IIM Ahmedabad way back in 2007, and other colleague, Mr. Praveen Sirohi and Mr. Parthasarathy Basu. So what I'll do is I have 4 slides which I want to kind of just share with all of you, and it'll take about 7 to 10 minutes, and then if there are any particular questions, I would be happy to answer them. So here, I'll just share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. So I think this is a very, very apt moment to discuss how do we handle post-pandemic challenges and opportunities in skill development. The world has significantly changed because of this pandemic. Not to say that the world was not changing before this. The world was already going through a churn over the last 7-8 years, mainly because of the technological revolution we had been seeing across the world and Asia in particular. What I think this is a very right time to kind of discuss these challenges, what we are seeing, and I would like to kind of take you through a couple of facts which we have been observing over the last 2 years, and then suggest some ways ahead and approach in terms of how do we move ahead in the skill development space. So if you look at the pre-COVID era and we look at the employment kind of share, this is an employment share mainly in the secondary and the services and the tertiary sector. I have not included the primary sector, although we know that in India, almost 50% of the population is in the agriculture and allied sectors. But if you look at the manufacturing and services sector, where skill development is largely focused, I think the main focus area or the largest employers were the construction, retail, and manufacturing sectors in terms of millions of workers in these sectors. The next group was textile, food, and education, and then the other sectors. So I think these were the largest employers pre-COVID, and what we have seen is a significant change of industry landscape in terms of the engagement of or the movement of the labor force and the way the new sectors are growing. So if you look at the post-COVID sector, I think what we are seeing now is that in the manufacturing, uh, if we look at the traditional sectors, which is manufacturing, textiles, autos, tourism, there we are seeing a significant job losses and in terms of the percentage of sector employment. There had been job losses in the BFSI, retail, food, and construction, but not so much as maybe in the other sectors. But what is interesting is that this has also led to the growth of five main, or I would say five sectors, which are actually leading or will be leading the net job creation, which are the health sector, e-commerce, infocom, transportation, and education. What we are also seeing and will be seeing is that in the traditional sectors or of the secondary space, there will be a change in the nature of jobs. The skills required will change, and I will talk about the way they are changing, how they will be changing in the next slide. There might not be so much of changes in the skill expectations with respect to construction sector. There might be a moderate need for capacity enhancement in the food, retail, and BFSI sectors. But what is interesting is that there will be emergence of new job roles in the healthcare, infocom, e-commerce, logistics sectors, things like AI specialists and digital marketeer and social catalog, digital cataloger. Many new things have come in the healthcare services, not only on the services side, but also on the pharmaceutical sides in terms of especially people involved in drug and medical product manufacturing. So I think these sectors are going to grow in a very formidable way, and they will be net job creators in the country, not only in the country. In fact, these are the trends we are seeing across Asia also. And they will be growing at a very high rate of about 6 to 10%, which is something which we should keep in mind and try and focus our energies here. What we have also been seeing in terms of one. Yeah. For example, what we have also been seeing, and this is a study which ADB has conducted across 4 countries in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam. In fact, if you get a chance, you should download this study from the ADB website, which is called Reaping the Benefits of Industry 4.0. Where we are seeing that not only post-COVID, but also the Industry 4.4 is also kind of changing the nature of skills which are being demanded by the industry. And what we are seeing is a kind of a transition from the routine physical to more of analytical skills, which are being demanded by the industry. So this is like green is the tasks with potentially increased time requirement. This is what the industry is saying. And across the industry sector, with be it garments, tourism, F&B, auto, IT, electronics, we are seeing that the industry is asking for more and more non-routine interpersonal skills, non-routine analytical skills. And that is a very important insight, I think, is also relevant for India also, where all these sectors are also going through a churn. So I think that's something which we should keep in mind when we are designing our courses or delivering our courses across various sectors, because a lot of routine physical and interpersonal is being taken over by robots, by artificial intelligence. We are now, in fact, what we are seeing is that even the coding is being done by the machines. So no more human engagement is required. So gradually the demand for coding courses, be it all this Java and Python, etc., will go down because these become very routine kind of programs, routine courses, which might not be able to find jobs, etc., in the industry. The other thing which this study has shown is on the right-hand side, which is very interesting, is that that there is a significant kind of if you look at that row of evaluation judgment, most of the industries have pegged as number 1 or 2 in terms of their ranking for these skills. So technical skills have really gone down the priority and the ask, mainly because a lot of the technical is being now handled by machines themselves, be it the AI or be it the robotics and the self-learning machines, I would say. And more demand is going for critical mind, even for, and this is very much relevant for India also, in terms of the changing nature of work, which we are seeing across industries, where more and more social skills and decision making and analytical skills are being required. So I think that's something which we should keep in mind when we are designing our programs, that there is not so much the requirement for the technical skills is going to go down. What is also interesting to note in these 4 countries is that the digital and ICT skills, which we peg very high in our discussions, has actually been rated very or ranked very low in terms of requirement, because many of these digital and ICT skills are also being taken over by they fall in that routine interpersonal kind of category. So very interestingly, the industries are saying that we don't want so much of digital and ICT skills per se, but more and more critical thinking and social and evaluation. Even numeracy is very high. So that's something I wanted to kind of point out in terms of how the world is changing between the pre-COVID and the post-COVID environment. And this is my last slide. In conclusion, I want to kind of place before the discussion panel and the participants that the way we have to move forward is that we cannot look at education, skills, economics, investment, innovations in silos. We have to have a one subject approach. And this is something which many Asian countries have started adopting. For example, Singapore, they have started developing industry transformation maps, which is for a particular industry, how that industry is going to grow, what are the skills it is going to need, what are the education inputs it is going to need, and they are building the entire ecosystem around that particular industry transformation map. I think, and that's very important. We cannot look at skills without looking at how the economics and the investment of the country is moving along. So that's one point I think we have to kind of keep in mind as we move along. The second is, I think, the supply systems like the training institutions, the TVET institutions, and other forms of delivery. I think that also has to become extremely flexible to respond to the demand. For example, if you look at the 3 components of how skills is delivered, we have the foundational skills generally are delivered in institutional structures, and advanced skills and futuristic skills are delivered generally outside the institutional structure. So I think what the supply systems, be it the institutions, I think they have to become very flexible. In fact, Dr. Vora is here, and I keep on following what the Delhi Skill University is doing, and I think the way they have structured their programs, the way they have structured their systems is very much flexible to kind of respond to the demands of the industry. And that is how most of the institutions have to develop in the country. The third is, I think we need a shift from a single skilling mindset to a multi-skilling mindset. We are seeing around ourselves, and Mr. Sarohi and Mr. Partha will highlight that there's no more assembly line work left in our industries. The world of work is getting more and more modular, and where we need multi-skills to be done by an individual or a group of individuals. So there is no more kind of a single skill kind of a requirement in the market. The more multi-skilled one is, there is the more possibility of economic engagement is there. The fourth point, I think, is that this is now being discussed more and more, that learning has to become a lifetime event, be it skill, reskill, or upskill. And learning is gradually moving to the non-traditional setups. We are seeing that we are talking about the concepts of learning societies, learning cities. In fact, if you get a chance, there is a very recent ADB publication on learning societies, and the way world is moving towards these learning societies. So I think that's something which we have to be conscious about, that learning is a lifetime event and not a one-time event, which you have to kind of take only in the age of between 15 and 24. And finally, I think partnerships have become imperative. There is a need to become more collaborative than competitive, and everyone has their own kind of core competence in a particular area, and that's why we have to move towards resource sharing, be it infrastructure, human, financial, processes, technology, rather than competing and kind of duplicating the efforts of each other. So I think with these some of these thoughts, I would like to stop and invite other panelists kind of throw more light on the scenario. And I would be happy to take any questions from the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johari, for your valuable remarks and for briefly summing up what trends are going to be in the post-pandemic scenario. I must first welcome Professor Niharika Bohra to this panel, and I must, for the sake of our participants, I must introduce her with a little details, although she's a very well-known face in the skill ecosystem. Professor Dr. Bohra is a PhD in psychology from University of Manitoba and a specialist in behavioral science from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, where she served as professor in organizational behavior area for 21 years. She has been involved in Center for Innovation and Incubation in Entrepreneurship at IIM Ahmedabad and is currently the director of the center. She has extensive experience with the corporate sector as a consultant, coach, mentor, and independent director. She has won the Best Instructor Award and has been the chairperson of IIM Ahmedabad's doctoral program, editor of Vikalpa, on editorial board of several international journals. She has published over 70 peer-reviewed research papers in top-level international and national journals and authored 3 books and developed teaching material that is used in several countries. She has guided 12 PhD students at IIM Ahmedabad and has been an academic advisor in 5 national level educational institutions. I welcome you, Dr. Niharika Bohra, to Kaushal Charcha, ma'am. And I am very happy and I'm very honored to be in the same panel with you. I'm Shalabh Nepalia. I'm an alumnus of Xavier Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar, where I'm told that you have also for some time. So I welcome you to Kaushal Charcha, ma'am. And moving ahead after the remarks of Mr. Saurabh Johari, we see, ma'am, that in post-pandemic India, in pre-pandemic India also, there was no demand or less demand for skill programs. So in post-pandemic situations, how can we shift to a demand-driven skilling ecosystem from a supply-driven skilling ecosystem? And probably if you could please also throw more light on if you feel that recognition of prior learning needs a renewed push in the skill ecosystem. I was going through the summary of one of the papers that you co-authored in 2014 for International Journal of Selection and Assessment, where there was a positive relationship established between prior related work experience and job performance. So we need good performing people for the industry, and if recognition of prior learning is a solution to that, then probably you can throw more light on that, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Shalabh, for the kind introduction, and also Mr. Saurabh for not only acknowledging the teacher-student relationship, but also for the wonderful presentation that you just made, which really nicely summarized many of the things, or actually opened up many of the things for a conversation. And other panelists who are with us at this point of time, and several people who are listening to us. Many of us, I can see are hopping from one webinar to another. So Mr. Siddharth, welcome as well. Let me just very quickly not say much. Whether we can make, so two questions you've asked, Shalabh. One is whether we can make something that is, whether we can make supplies, skilling supply driven rather than demand driven. And my answer is that, there is a huge amount of almost ignorance about what is skilling. Yeah, that's a first issue. For the longest time, we have thought that skilling is something that is only related to blue collar or gray collar work. And skilling is something that can be done as a transaction for a very short period of time. So you can take somebody for 3 months, you can train them, and that's about it. I think what Saurabh, you have pointed out is very interesting, because the jobs of the future are not in the blue and the gray collar. While they are there, they're never going to go away. But the growth is in critical skills, is in analytical skills, is in reflection, ability to think rather than ability to reproduce or to do what is routine. Because the industry 4.0 is on us, routine work is going to be taken over by robots and AI, whether we like it or not. There is going to be more and more requirement for people to be able to do the work that a machine cannot easily do, which you can't program a machine to do. So if you go back to some of the definitions of skill, skill actually is about having discernment and judgment. Yeah, and discernment and judgment only comes when you do it enough times, right? So we all talk about the the discernment of let's say a Ronaldo. Yeah, how he can judge from a distance the shortest, the even a minor distance difference, and be able to pitch a goal in that way. Or we have all heard about the discernment of the glass splitter of the Borosil, right? So even though you might have all kinds of things, still there is a person who spits, and by just discerning how the spit dissipates, is able to say whether the glass is actually baked well or not. And these are skills that don't come by a 3-month training. They come when you deeply embed yourself in that. You learn the ins and outs of it. You learn you reflect on it, you abstract from it, and you learn the judgment and discernment that comes from doing something for a time. So my point is that skill is not something that can be done through a magic wand. I can still get you to learn a concept maybe in 10 weeks time, but I can't get you to learn a skill in 10 weeks time. You need a longer immersion, longer practice, and a longer stay with it. Yeah, and that is where I think one of the things is that we need to understand that we need people to recognize that no matter how smart they are, if they need to be good at what they do, they need to invest time in it. They need to learn it well, right? And therefore, I think in that context, your question of RPL becomes very important, because while we may never be able to motivate enough people to immerse themselves in any skill, by need or by accident, there are people who have gotten immersed in a particular field for a long time. So whether it is a car mechanic, whether it is a plumber, whether it is a bricklayer, it doesn't matter. They, for whatever reason, have been doing it from a very young age, and they've been doing it for a long enough time. And yet those people that these people who are informally trained also need polish. They also need to learn the newer aspects of whatever they are doing. And therefore, RPL cannot simply be a certifying process, but it has to be, in addition, what is new that is happening in this field. For the longest time, I'm sure all of us know that in any part of the country, the plumber is typically from Orissa. They're not only from Orissa, but they're from a particular part of Orissa. But many of these plumbers, who might be really nice human beings and they're traveling across the country doing plumbing, they really haven't kept up, obviously, because they have informally learned. They haven't kept up with all the new things that are happening in plumbing. And therefore, again, I think RPL should acknowledge that I don't need to teach this person from holding the spanner or to understanding how plumbing works, but we need to upgrade them, and we need to recognize what they are worth and actually make it, and therefore have better plumbing and better plumbers, for the better plumbers and better plumbing for the society. I think that is what we need to do. And unfortunately, today RPL is only certification, or skilling is a short transaction, and both of these need to change. So maybe I will stop here at this point of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks, ma'am. And going ahead, we have heard from Dr. Vohra, we have heard from Mr. Johari on the larger trends of the skilling ecosystem. However, to understand more about the industry perspective, I would like to invite Mr. Parthasarathy Basu, who is AGM HR at TAFE Motors and Tractors. Sir, the industry is the final destination where a skilled person is going to go and work. Either they will be self-employed or they will be working in the industry. However, we still do not see the trends where a skilled person is given a premium in the industry and is still considered at par with a non-skilled person. So if you could please share some perspectives and please throw some light on how what is the industry's perspective with respect to this, and how industry plans to move ahead with respect to giving premiums to skilled individuals. Mr. Parthasarathy, please.
Yeah, very good evening to all, and thanks to your university for giving this wonderful opportunity for a platform to interact. The question is basically the skill premium, how the industry can facilitate. In this light, I would like to just share a few thoughts on this, because the entire spectrum of skilling process is rapidly going to change, and it has already undergone a lot of changes, and it is changing in a very different dimension in the coming few years. So we have to understand, and we need to understand actually what are the macro trends, what our other panel members have also put some. So these macro trends are to be first gauged, and accordingly our entire skilling process as well as the industry academia partnership to be mapped, revisited, and to be redone. This corona pandemic has in fact was a very, I would say, drastic shift from how the process was. The overnight operation has to be changed in manufacturing industries like ours, where we are in mass manufacturing of or automotive tractors. So there, overnight, our way of operation has changed. Though the basic fundamentals of manufacturing has not changed, but many of the operations has changed, and that has to be done overnight. So this is one of the phases which happened, and this sort of disruptions will come in future. And we are in the era of Industry 4.0, where there will be a lot of de-skilling which will happen because of the introduction of the robotics or of the manufacturing. So we need to understand first what the trends are, what are the macro trends are, and then accordingly work on. I'll just give you some examples. This healthcare sector is undergone a major shift in this few months of pandemic. Earlier, he used to go to doctor and he used to diagnose by seeing the patient, and then that mode of diagnosis was there. Now this has undergone a drastic shift, and this is there to be there. But how this diagnostics has to be done in a more accurate manner in a remote, you can say, connect. So that has to be explored. So there would be new, you can say, area where this, you can say, new ways of diagnostics, which can give you more relevant and, you can see, important data points for the doctor to decide. That would be available and that can be reached. Then we have seen a lot of, you can say, accelerated supply chain and changes in the supply chain, and e-commerce has drastically flourished in this few months. The sourcing of the production in the industry where we are, that also are changing a lot. A lot of our components were sourced earlier from, you can say, out of the country from manufacturing bases. In fact, we also have our manufacturing bases in China. So now gradually there is a shift. Many of the Japanese automotive manufacturers or the Korean, you can say, consumer durable manufacturers, they are shifting their bases from China to other locations to become closer to the customer. So these are some of the macro trends which are there, very much visible, and based on that, we need to realign the, you can say, skilling. So artificial intelligence, cloud technology, IoT, these are not a buzzword anymore. These are there to stay for a long time with much more, I would say, rooted impact. So we need to, you can say, take care of this, you can aspect, and then based on that, we need to strengthen the academic partnership. Yes, as you have mentioned, the question which you have raised, are, you can say, requirement where industry specifics are required and that those are not available. And with this new, you can see, industry 4.0 phase, from industry 3.0 to 4.0, this command and control system to more of a autonomous system. So this will actually change a lot the, you can see, the basket of the steps which are required by the industry. I see from the automotive industry per se, we are drastic shift. So there is an opportunity to connect with the academia, and from the institute there should be also a lot of flexibility is required in terms of the syllabus and other, you can say, education, whatever the methodologies we have. So a lot of cohesive interaction is needed with the industry. What are the requirements, and then based on that, if you can bridge certain, you can say, changes in the curriculum and can teach students on those aspects, so they can be absorbed on a priority basis on the industry. I'll just give you some example of that, though it's in the blue, you can say, color category. There is one, you can say, training center, which I believe all of you are aware of. This is Indo-German Tool Room. So they work on certain skilling models of Germany and funded by the German government. So we are also working closely with them. So they have a very good IDA sort of program where their students, they teach over there at their training center. Then after that, they send those students to the partnering industry like us. They are there with us for some months. Then they again go back, complete a certain part of the curriculum, again come back and do the rest of the, you can say, implant internship. So this way, around 15 months during their curriculum of 3 years, they are engaged in the industry. So in that case, they know what is the industry requirements are, what are the shifts are. They are trained on that aspect. So obviously, the employability of those students in this particular industry becomes much more higher than the general ITI or the diploma students. So this way, we can, I would say, first we need to find out what is the horizon, what are the new mega trends. Accordingly, you can say we need work in the back end, and there is more requirement of industry academic to be strengthened. It's not to be just to be said, it has to be done actually for the sake of both, for the students, for the academic institution, as well as for the industry. So this would be highly, I would say, beneficial for these 3 entities at a time. So I believe there are a lot of scope in this, and in Indian context, we are still in a very recent stage, but it's high time to read the trends accordingly devise the curriculum and collaborate with the industry and have a win-win, I can say, proposition for all. So that's what I like to summarize.
So probably the industry associations and the sector skill councils need to rope in your suggestions, sir, and see what curriculums can be developed with which are parallel to the Industry 4.0 concept. I'll move on to another aspect of skilling, which is emerging in post-COVID era, which is blended mode of training. And in blended mode of training, the main challenge is to reach those people, those candidates who are in the hinterlands of the country who do not enjoy access to 4G networks. So if Mr. Praveen Sirohi could throw a few, share his thoughts and throw some light on how blended mode can be used in post-pandemic skilling ecosystem, and how you see that such modes or any other formal modes can emerge, any other modes of training can be taken up for the skilling ecosystem, sir. Mr. Praveen.
Thank you, Sulabh. So I would like to say that basically after this pandemic situation, even from the duration when that the last year that we started that kind of the issue from the March is, so a lot of development started parallelly from at all over front, not even in the education, everywhere related to in the offices, everywhere that the connectivity is required to be must to have and kind of the communication, whether it is in office work or whether it is in education kind of the part. So fortunately, when this pandemic came, little bit telecom industry, because I was being since long years in telecom industry also. So fortunately, telecom industry being little bit prepared for that, and they have that bandwidth because of the 4G launch properly at right time. And because of that, the data speed was not being that much issue, which we say definitely the coverage is quite less. That as you mentioned, that rural area, that the connectivity is an issue, and the candidate cannot get that mobile connections properly at that house. But basically, if you see that as soon as that this problem started, the lot of investment has started from the telecom industry to develop the telecom power towers development, and even that expansion, because everywhere the towers were there when they were the 2G also, but they parallelly they were trying to keep the swapping that from the 2G to the 4G. But initially they were took it the main districts, and then kind of that like populations, and then they were moving toward the rural area. So parallelly they tried a lot. And I had that data that around in this pandemic, their data consumption increased to 2.5 times within a period of time, that whatever be that in this total data consumption of that, so it has increased to a kind of that. So it was a challenge, but you might have seen that even the government college government schools have started that kind of that learning through online or what kind of this. So little bit cover up has been made by the industry. But definitely, as far as you're saying that blended course, so blended here basically there was direct the training which were earlier going on the offline is kind of the mode. So there was a think of how we can be going to change it. So there was a era of like one is that you can give that online training, but what is happening in the online training, you have to put 100% programs on the online through that. So there is no much control and the kind of the interactive communication between the teacher and the students. There was a big challenge was coming, and there was no kind of the feedback whether the student is able to learn or not. So that problem at that time the industry as well as the we as an SSC were thinking for the blended learning. So blended learning incorporate, it was in internationally also accepted that kind of thing. So in that blended learning, there was a thought process that the online as well as some part of the interaction section should be there, and that it should be more than 30 to 40% minimum. So suppose there is 100% of the total courses there. So at least more than 30% part should be through the blended mode of that, or practical training or kind of thing. You can, because this particularly in this our skilling, education is part of the most of the part is theory, but basically when you are going to be talking skilling, and that is especially for the blue collar kind of the jobs. So on job training is much kind of things to teach, so that whether the candidate is able to learn or not, to know exactly, the on job training is must. So that part is need to be covered through the blended mode. So it is going to be accepted everywhere. Even the NSDC has taken up that few batches. You might be aware that recently they have converted the few batches in the blended modes, and we are like, and they have given that authority to the SSC to monitor this kind of that batches, whether the, and then based on our feedback for the new what kind of the blended need to be evolved, that is going to be decided in the next mode of that. But definitely it is there. There is another is the hybrid training is also there. In that you can be like go with that online as well as then offline, as well as there is some kind of the AR VR kind of things. That is in India it is not yet much come, but definitely by the way the requirements are coming, kind of that things are moving in since 1 year. Definitely that virtual reality and augmented reality is going to be play a big role in this. At least it will be going to be start in the big cities, metro cities, because definitely like we are the students also required the kind of the tools and equipment, but augmented reality also. So those are going to be play a vital role, especially in kind of the skilling, where you want to learn the things from the distance and want to keep that things online kind of the mode. So AR we are going to play a big role in that. So that is actually, and I would like to take a little bit part on this particular industry connect also, because as an SSC, we are being like associated with that, like connect with a lot of industries. So it would be like big point to think that there are the unorganized sector as well as the organized sector in the industry. And in case of blue collar jobs, more than 65 to 70% labors in blue collar goes to the unorganized sector, and the organized sector capture only 30% of the labor kind of thing. And unorganized sector, most of the time there was a issue related to the payouts, particularly for that, like because earlier you were asked one question related to the premium kind of the things for the skilled labor. So that also the question arises when the candidate goes to the unorganized sector kind of the things. But definitely skill is must. And that the way India is looking, last today also I attended that one of that prime minister and then our honorable minister the program. So it definitely need to be think all together, whether it is related to upskilling and related to reskilling also. Upskilling, as the Nita madam was showing, basically RPL is should move through. It is not only part of the assessment; it should move through upskilling also. Yeah, definitely there should be kind of the upskilling, whatever that person knows, in that what the things he can be little bit improve in that particular things, and then with that parallelly connect to the RPL. So that would be the good kind of session which madam was saying. So that's all what I would like to be obtained.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sirui, for your remarks. We also have Mr. Siddharth Chaturvedi joining in on Kaushal Charcha. Although he's a very well-known figure, however, I would like to formally introduce him for the sake of all our participants. Mr. Siddharth Chaturvedi is Executive Vice President of ISECT. Mr. Chaturvedi is an engineering graduate from MANIT Bhopal and an MBA from SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai. And he manages the operations of the entire network of over 20,000 centers across the country, as well as makes the strategy for group's expansion and business diversification. He is also governing body and board of management of ISECT Group of Universities. Target-oriented center openings, introduction of new industry-related programs, introduction of online learning systems and technologies, and streamlining of certain internal operations are some of the areas that Mr. Siddharth has contributed towards. He has also been chairperson of CII Bhopal Zone, CII Madhya Pradesh, chairman of the panel on Skills and Education, PhD, CCI, Madhya Pradesh. He's the founding member of ASTP, Association of Skill Training Providers, and also the chairperson for an Entrepreneurship and Innovation Vertical, Young Indians, Bhopal chapter. I welcome you, sir, on Kaushal Charcha. And since ISECT has been a leader in using technology to support its skill initiatives, I would like to invite you to share your views on the use of technology in post-COVID skilling programs and how technology can impact the skills ecosystem more. What innovations are there in the technology field which can help the skill ecosystem move forward post-pandemic?
Yes, thank you, Shalabh, and good evening, Mr. Praveen. Good evening to all the panelists, and a very warm welcome to all the attendees. Once again on Kaushal Charcha. This is a week-long dialogue series, and we thought that we should be doing something, apart from just a one-day, one-off session, to cover the various kinds of themes which are very, peculiar to our skill development ecosystem, and hence and I will try and bring in a little bit of Hindi as well. So and that's why जब ये पूरा World Youth Skills Day का occasion हमने देखा तो we decided कि हमें एक नहीं बल्कि सारे topics के ऊपर कम से कम एक चर्चा जरूर आयोजित करनी चाहिए, so that all the relevant people are a part of it. Apologies for joining late today, but I have been hearing all the wonderful discussion और कुछ important themes already discuss हुए हैं, जैसे upskilling है या wage premium for skilled workforce है, blended learning है, COVID के बाद का जो experience सबका रहा है for skill development. तो मैं शलभ ने जो question लिया है वहाँ से start करके, since we are I think towards the end of the session also, I will quickly highlight a few themes which are also important for the entire skilling ecosystem, right from the bottom at the district level to the top at to the state and then at the center level. So I think COVID के बाद technology adoption का जो rate है वो सिर्फ accelerate ही हुआ है, और हम सब ये आसपास अपने आप भी देख रहे हैं. बहुत सारा रीस्किलिंग अपस्किलिंग हमने अपने आप और अपनी लाइफ में भी देखा है, और वही आज प्रधानमंत्री जी ने रीस्किलिंग अपस्किलिंग नॉट फॉर यूथ बट फॉर द एंटायर कंट्री भी अपने वक्तव्य में उन्होंने यही बात की. तो टेक्नोलॉजी इज गोइंग टू बी मोर ऑफ एन इनेबलर गोइंग अहेड इन द स्किलिंग इकोसिस्टम. अभी तक हमने टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज सिर्फ फॉर्मल एजुकेशन सिस्टम में देखा है, इन द हायर एजुकेशन और इन द स्कूल सेगमेंट. अभी तक टेक्नोलॉजी का बहुत ज्यादा यूज हमने स्किलिंग इकोसिस्टम में नहीं देखा है. नाउ दिस इज अ चैलेंज फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस टू सी कि टेक्नोलॉजी एक टिपिकल सेगमेंट जो हैंड्स ऑन लर्निंग पे चलता है वहां पे क्या रोल प्ले कर सकती है. Having said that, I think for skills ecosystem, there will be no shortcut but doing the skills with your own hands and doing hands-on learning. पर जो theoretical concepts हैं, जो exposure है, जो important concepts हैं, उसको हम जरूर blended way of learning में introduce कर सकते हैं. और वही pilot इस समय NSDC के level पे भी चल रहा है, और कुछ स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स ने भी वो पायलट करना शुरू किया है. सो इट इज फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस टू सी हाउ दैट पैन्स आउट. टेक्नोलॉजी की अगर हम बात करें तो उसमें दो चीजें आती हैं. एक तो पूरा डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, जहाँ पे कनेक्टिविटी, आप कौन सा लर्निंग मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम यूज कर रहे हैं, आपका फ्रंट एंड कैसा है, यूजर एक्सपीरियंस कैसा है, असेसमेंट टूल कौन सा है, और वो सारा जो टेक्नोलॉजी आर्किटेक्चर आप लेकर आएंगे. So that is one aspect which is still, I think, the easier aspect, because there are many options available and there are many things available. But उस infrastructure को use करके जो content हमें देना है वो हमारा real challenge है. अगर हम online learning और blended learning को ज़्यादा बड़े level पे लेके जाना चाहते हैं तो content is one of our real challenges, because स्किल इकोसिस्टम में कंटेंट डेवलपमेंट का काम अभी बहुत ही नेग्लिजिबल लेवल पे हुआ है। तो इसके लिए हम अगर ये देखें कि कुछ एसएससी जैसे टीएसएससी ने वो काम किया है, अगर हम एसएससी लेवल पे इसको देखते हैं तो एक एकेडमिक ऑडिट एंड प्रिपेयरिंग ऑफ करिकुलम एज पर ब्लेंडेड लर्निंग फॉर्मेट, तो ये एक सॉर्ट ऑफ नए सिरे से की जाने वाली एक्सरसाइज है, क्योंकि जो एग्जिस्टिंग करिकुलम है उसमें हम बीच बीच में ऑनलाइन लर्निंग इंसर्ट करें। इससे अच्छा हम ऑनलाइन लर्निंग को ध्यान में रखते हुए करिकुलम हमें रीड्रॉ करना पड़ेगा कि उस पूरे करिकुलम में कौन से कॉन्सेप्ट्स ऑनलाइन लर्निंग से जा सकते हैं और कौन से कॉन्सेप्ट्स जो है वो मॉड्यूल वे में जा सकते हैं। सो दैट to my mind is one big challenge, and it will be interesting to see if either at the state government level or at the SSC level or in a partnership level with private sector, this problem is going to be solved or not. तो ये मेरे upfront मेरे views हैं for technology. Yes, at the overall level, technology is here to stay, and blended learning will only adoption of blended learning will only increase. उसमें हमें ये भी ध्यान रखना है कि जो इनिशियल एक्साइटमेंट लर्नर्स का टेक्नोलॉजी की तरफ रहता है वो आगे चल के फेड अवे ना हो जाए, क्योंकि एक इनिशियल एक्साइटमेंट और एक सॉर्ट ऑफ फीलिंग ऑफ फैंटेसी होता है कि हम टेक्नोलॉजी पे ये सारा काम कर रहे हैं, बट इट कैन ऑल्सो वेयर आउट एंड एक फेड अवे होने के चांस भी हैं. सो दैट इज ऑल्सो वन ऑफ द चैलेंजेस ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी. So that is on technology, and coming to the other thing, क्योंकि आज World Youth Skills Day है, and greetings to everyone on World Youth Skills Day. So I think some of the themes which are important for us to sit up and take notice. One very powerful signal which has happened recently is convergence of education and skills. And it is only the first time that we have a common minister who will be handling education and skills. That in itself is a big signal. और ये चीज़ हम अपने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लेवल पे और अपने पार्टिसिपेशन के लेवल पे बहुत समय से कह रहे हैं दैट ये साइलोज में ट्रीट करने वाली चीज़ नहीं है. It has to be done hand in hand. So it will be interesting to see how the integration now happens between education and skills. That is one. Second, हमने ये देखा है कि increasingly apprenticeship is becoming quite the effective way to introduce skills in a work integrated environment. तो ये भी देखना इंटरेस्टिंग होगा कि हम अप्रेंटिसशिप स्कीम का नेट कैसे और बढ़ा सकते हैं, कैसे डिफरेंट स्टेट्स उसमें अपना अपना फ्लेवर ला सकते हैं. कैन दे इंसेंटिवाइज ऑन एंड अबव ऑफ द NAPS इंसेंटिव at the state level to have better adoption, greater adoption of apprenticeship scheme. That is another thing which I would like to say. Third thing, I think for long हमने ये देखा है कि हम मतलब we are devising schemes and policy in absence of a concrete data. हमारे पास अभी भी and it's for no fault of anybody, because there is a complex it is a complex country. The workforce nature is also complex. But what I'm saying is जो district skill committees आए हैं with the vision of bottom up demand mapping, कि हमारे डिस्ट्रिक्ट में कौन से जॉब रोल्स की डिमांड होगी, अगर वो सही इंटेंट और स्पिरिट में आगे चलता है तो हमारे पास एक रोबस्ट मैकेनिज्म होगा टू फाइंड आउट कि हमें किन सेक्टर्स में, किस जिले में, किन सेक्टर्स में ट्रेनिंग हमें करनी है. ऑन द अदर हैंड, लोकलाइजेशन ऑफ स्किल्स अभी भी हमारे यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं हुआ है. मतलब अभी इन सम अदर in a separate session somebody was giving an example of an ITI who was doing a training on mechatronics, whereas वो उस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में है जहाँ पे फिशरीज का या एग्रीकल्चर का बहुत काम होता है. तो हमें जब तक we don't localize the skill development program and link it up with either the ODOP or the local flavor of the district, हमारे पास हर समय ये प्रॉब्लम होगी कि we have skilled the youth but they are not ready to migrate, or they are not ready to go out of the district and they are not getting the jobs. तो localization एक बहुत important angle है जो आगे शायद अगर DSCs के आने से convergence बढ़ेगा तो localization भी बढ़ना चाहिए. And finally, I would say, NEP is a great tool, at least in terms of the spirit and the intent. It talks about the right things. So if we use NEP as a tool, I think vocationalization of school education हम बढ़ा सकते हैं. Sixth standard से जो exposure हमें students को देना है, वो एक काम definitely in some states it has started on a pilot level. And even at the higher education level, the aim is to have 50% of the learners exposed to one skill or the other by in the next few years. तो ये कुछ important tools हैं जहाँ पे हम skills को और mainstream कर सकते हैं. And these are some of the themes, I think, very interesting themes which are playing out. It's for all of us to see. Skills at the end is a complex topic in our country specifically, and we have to remember, one policy fits all or one size fits all approach is not going to be successful in our country. So rather, it has to be done from state to state and maybe from district to district also. So I'll stop here. These are some of my comments on today's occasion. Once again, thank you, Shalabh, for your question, and thank you all the panelists who have given such great remarks in today's session.
Thank you very much for your response. I'd like to open the house to all the participants now for any questions if they wish to ask them from the panel. One or two questions which I have noted down in due course of time. One question from one of the participants is on standardized counseling. So while the trainings are happening across the country, there is a demand for cadre of community counselors. So how can we standardize counseling so that we can put right people in right place in the right training programs, so that the chain of the entire training program is smooth? If probably Mr. Johari might like to ask this, answer this question.
Yeah, thanks, Shalabh. I think counseling in today's age, and as some of the other participants had been saying, that the entire nature of skilling is changing, and unless and until we see value, there is very little the demand is not really we are not able to kind of respond to the demand of skilling. And therefore, I say that counseling and standardization of counseling at district levels, etc., is very crucial. And if we can actually bring in the blended mode in counseling also, because if we are going to create another cadre of counselors for the country or even for various districts, etc., that is not sustainable. So I think counseling again has to come in a very, very blended mode, and with the use of technology, where some centralized counseling systems are created, both human as well as machine based. I think that's a more logical approach than really creating a cadre of counselors across the board. But in terms of processes, when it comes to processes, I think processes of counseling has to be very, very much standardized. The information, as Siddharthji mentioned, that now we are gradually moving towards very data-based planning systems. So there I would say that even in counseling, a whole lot of data would be required before we meet the students and counsel them. Otherwise, the kind of questions which the young people have these days, unless and until we back it up with data as to what will lead to what, and the youth is very smart these days to kind of gather their own information. So in order to make counseling very successful, I think one, it has to be backed by a very solid database, and we ourselves have to prepare before we launch any kind of counseling service. And second, I think a blended approach is much more useful than a really cadre-based approach of in counseling. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, sir. Another question that has come up is related to MOOCs, massive open online courseware, where the participant is asking if how can we promote adoption of MOOCs among the candidates in the country. If probably Mr. Sirohi might like to answer that question, and if Mr. Siddharth wants to
Can you
add
repeat
on
once
that.
again?
The question is on MOOCs, sir, massive open online courseware, and how can these MOOCs can be adopted among the trainees because the adoption of MOOCs is still not there. So how can training through MOOCs can happen?
Yeah, basically, this actually, as now a lot of trainings are moving towards the particularly for the online courses and this for the blended learning. So the people need to be think on that they are going to be like develop that kind of skill for that learning through that courses and basically it's all learning the system through online as well as the blended course through that.
So, Mr. Siddharth, would you like to add?
No, so I think it's a very natural phenomena, and we've already seen the kind of action which has happened in the edtech space. So sometimes the situation unfolds in a manner where you don't really have to do something to incentivize it. It happens just naturally. So in the last 1.5 years, many learners on their own, without being informed or told, out of the necessity to stay relevant, to upskill themselves, to utilize the time at hand, explored the online learning courses available and joined themselves. On the other hand, a lot of institutions and universities also realizing the change which is happening, either developed their own solutions or joined hands with a Coursera or an edX or players like that. So, but again, I would like to come back in saying that for an effective utilization, we must not forget that for self-paced learning courses, the rate of completion, even for Coursera or edX, stands in a single digit, even today. So the online learning and MOOCs programs are best utilized when they are integrated with the curriculum and they run along with a facilitator who can use those resources when covering a part of the curriculum. Apart from that, for an online learning program just to be successful on its own, either has to be a very capsule or a bite-sized, learning module which can offer learning on the go, or it has to have the element of, live interaction at regular intervals to break the sort of, monotony of completely learning on your own. So these are some of the considerations, but overall, I think the situation playing out itself is nudging people towards that direction. So you don't really have to motivate learners to go towards that direction. They will reach, where they will find the opportunity to upskill themselves and stay relevant.
Thank you, sir, for your response. We are at the end of this first session of Kaushal Charcha, and I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers who have joined with us. Dr. Vora has left because she had to join in another panel. So I thank you once again to Mr. Parthasarthi, Mr. Saurabh Johari, Mr. Praveen Sirohi, Mr. Siddharth Chaturvedi for joining in the Kaushal Charcha. And for the participants, all the participants can join in every day till July 23rd, wherein different topics will be discussed on Kaushal Charcha, where various themes will be discussed on Kaushal Charcha on 4 to 5 p.m. every day. So tomorrow the topic would be mainstreaming vocational education, making a new education policy to 2020 a reality. So thank you to all the participants who have spared time for joining us today. And once again, thank you to all the distinguished speakers. And probably we can connect online after this session, offline after this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shalabh. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shalabh.